I never thought my life could fall apart in an instant. It happened so swiftly, so quietly, that for a while I thought I might have misinterpreted it. But truth has a way of seeping into your bones, even when you try to deny it. And this truth, this betrayal, was too sharp, too deep to ignore. It began with a sensation, a small, nagging thing at first, like an itch I couldn't quite reach. My husband Daniel had been distant lately, not in an obvious way, not the kind of coldness that people notice and whisper about. It was more subtle than that, a delayed response when I spoke to him, a quiet sigh when he thought I wasn't listening. He was still affectionate, still present, but something felt off. I told myself I was imagining it. After all, marriages go through phases. People get tired. Work stress, life stress, it all adds up. I refused to be the paranoid wife who saw ghosts where there were none. And then one evening, I found the message. It wasn't hidden. Not really. Daniel had left his phone face up on the kitchen counter while he showered. I wasn't looking for anything. I swear I wasn't. But when a notification lit up the screen, my eyes flickered toward it. Just a glance. That's all it took. I miss you. I can't stop thinking about last night. My stomach turned to stone. I stared at the words. My breath caught somewhere between my ribs. The name attached to the message wasn't saved, just a number. But I knew deep down before I could even think of reasons why it couldn't be true. I knew. I hesitated, my hand hovering over his phone. If I looked, there would be no going back. If I opened that message, my world would shift into something unrecognizable. But I did it anyway. The conversation was brief, but it didn't need to be long to be damning. The messages before it were deleted, leaving only that last haunting text. The timestamp was from this morning. While I was sleeping next to him, I heard the water shut off in the bathroom. Panic surged through me, hot and electric. I placed the phone back exactly as it was and stepped away, heart pounding against my ribs. My mind raced. Who was it? How long had this been going on? And worst of all, what exactly had happened last night? I barely heard Daniel's voice as he stepped out of the bathroom, towel slung over his shoulders. He kissed my cheek in passing, his touch light, familiar. I wanted to recoil. Instead, I smiled, nodded at whatever he said, and excused myself to the bedroom. I needed time to think. I had to find out the truth before I confronted him. There was no name, no clues, just a single damning message. I scrolled through my mind searching for possibilities. A coworker, an old friend, and then an awful, terrible thought slithered into my brain. My mother. It didn't make sense. It was absurd. But I couldn't shake it. She and Daniel had always gotten along, maybe even too well at times. The casual inside jokes, the way she touched his arm when she laughed, the times she stopped by unannounced when I wasn't home. I had never thought much of it before. Now every little interaction replayed in my head with a new sinister light. I needed proof. I waited until Daniel was asleep before I slipped out of bed, my fingers trembling as I reached for his phone. I knew his passcode. Of course I did. My hand shook as I typed it in, my pulse hammering in my ears. The messages were gone, deleted. My heart sank. But then I remembered something. His phone backed up automatically to our shared cloud account if I could access the backups. I hurried to my laptop, logging in with a desperation I barely recognized in myself. My breath caught as I scrolled through the data. A string of messages recovered. My hands trembled as I clicked, and then my world shattered. The messages weren't graphic. There were no explicit details, but the meaning was clear. Too clear. You make me feel alive again. We have to be careful. I don't know how much longer we can do this. The responses were there too. Messages from my mother. Her name right there on the screen. My throat closed. My vision blurred. I wanted to scream, to smash the laptop, to erase what I had just seen. But there was no erasing this, no coming back from it. And worst of all, I still didn't know the full truth. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, the words replayed in my head like a haunting echo, tightening around my chest until I could barely breathe. We have to be careful. I don't know how much longer we can do this. I stared at my laptop screen, reading and rereading the messages, willing them to mean something else, anything else. Maybe I was missing context. Maybe it wasn't what it seemed. Maybe. But no matter how I twisted it in my mind, the truth was clear. My husband and my mother were having an affair. The thought alone made my stomach turn. It wasn't just betrayal. It was something far worse. Something that made me feel like the world I had built my life around had suddenly crumbled beneath my feet. This wasn't just any other woman. This wasn't just a mistake. This was my own mother. I had to know more. My fingers were icy as I scrolled through more of their messages, trying to piece together the timeline. Most of their conversations were vague, too careful, as if they knew they had to erase their tracks. But here and there, bits of information slipped through. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me. We were so close to getting caught. I swallowed hard last night. What had happened last night? I ran through the day in my head, searching for anything unusual. Daniel had come home late, claiming he had a work dinner. I hadn't questioned it. And my mother, had I spoken to her? Yes, she had called me earlier just to check in. Her voice had been warm, familiar. She had even laughed at something I said. I felt sick. I slammed the laptop shut, my breathing uneven. I needed to pull myself together. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. I had proof. And now I had to decide what to do with it. Confronting Daniel right away would be easy. But what if he denied it? What if he lied straight to my face? I needed something solid, something undeniable, and there was only one way to get it. I had to catch them in the act. The thought alone sent a cold shiver down my spine. But I knew I wouldn't be able to rest until I had the full truth. My mother had a habit of inviting Daniel over to help her with things, fixing the sink, setting up her Wi-Fi, little favors that now felt like pathetic excuses to spend time alone with him. If they were still seeing each other, it was only a matter of time before they slipped up. I just had to be ready. The next day, I forced myself to act normal. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. I smiled at Daniel over breakfast, nodded at his small talk, even kissed him before he left for work. His lips felt foreign against mine. The thought of where else they had been made me nauseous. Then I called my mother. "Hey, Mom," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Are you home today?" "Oh, hi, sweetheart," she chirped. "Yes, I am. Why?" I hesitated. "I was just thinking of stopping by later. Maybe we could have dinner together." There was a pause, just a second too long. "Oh, that sounds lovely," she said. But her voice had a slight hesitation to it. "What time were you thinking?" "I'll let you know," I said. "I have some errands to run first." We hung up and I sat there staring at my phone. My heart was racing, my mind spinning. That pause, that slight hesitation. Was I imagining it, or was she already trying to cover something up? I had to find out. I waited and I watched. That afternoon, I parked my car a block away from my mother's house and settled in. My hands clenched around the steering wheel. I felt like a lunatic sitting there spying on my own family. But I had to see it for myself. Time dragged on. My nerves frayed with every passing minute. And then, just as I was about to second-guess this myself, Daniel's car pulled up. My stomach dropped. I watched as he stepped out, glancing around before heading up to the front door. My mother opened it almost immediately, too quickly, as if she had been waiting for him. She let him in, and the door shut behind them. My hand shook as I gripped my phone. This was it. This was real. I didn't even realize I had stopped breathing until my vision blurred at the edges. The logical part of me screamed to leave, to turn away, before I saw something that would be burned into my mind forever. But I couldn't move. Minutes passed, then an hour. My pulse pounded in my ears, a steady, deafening rhythm that only grew louder with each second. What were they doing in there? Talking, laughing, touching. 1,000 images flashed through my mind, each one worse than the last. And then finally, the door opened. Daniel stepped out first. He looked different, his shirt slightly wrinkled, his hair a little out of place. My mother stood in the doorway watching him with an expression I couldn't quite read. Soft, almost tender. He turned back to her, and then to my absolute horror, he reached up and touched her face. It was brief, gentle, intimate, in a way that made my stomach turn. My mother leaned into it just for a second. Then, as if suddenly realizing they were still in plain sight, she pulled back. Daniel hesitated. Then he nodded, heading to his car. I ducked lower in my seat as he drove past, my entire body rigid with shock. I turned my gaze back to my mother, who was still standing in the doorway, staring after him. Her lips were slightly parted, as if she wanted to call him back. I felt like I was going to be sick. She stayed there for a long time, before finally stepping back inside and closing the door behind her. I sat frozen in my car, my mind spinning, my body numb. I had seen enough, but the worst part, I still didn't know if I had the strength to confront them. Not yet. I used to believe my mother was my best friend. Growing up, it had always been just the two of us. My father left when I was a baby, and she never remarried. She told me she never needed a man, that I was all she ever wanted. We did everything together. Shopping trips, movie nights, long talks over coffee. Even as I got older, our bond never changed. She was the person I turned to when I had my first heartbreak, when I lost my job, when I felt like the world was too much. She was also the first person I told about Daniel. I still remember how her eyes had lit up when I gushed about him, how she had leaned in, hanging on to every word. "He sounds like a dream," she had said, smiling in that way she always did when she wanted to tease me. "When do I get to meet him?" And when she finally did, she had been nothing but warm and welcoming. "Oh, you are handsome," she had laughed, giving him a playful nudge. "You better take care of my girl." Daniel had chuckled, wrapping an arm around me. I wouldn't dare do anything less. And I had believed him. I had believed both of them. I never saw the shift happen. If there was a moment when things between them crossed a line, I had missed it completely. Maybe it had started as innocent conversations, a friendly bond. Maybe my mother had given him advice about how to handle me during fights, told him stories about my childhood, made him laugh the way she always made people laugh. Maybe that's all it took. Maybe one night, after too much wine, after one too many glances held a second too long, the lines blurred. Or maybe it had been a slow creeping thing, something neither of them had planned, but neither of them had stopped. I didn't know, but I was going to find out. I spent the next few days watching them like a ghost, quietly collecting pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Every touch, every glance, every moment when Daniel hesitated before answering a question. The way my mother's smile lingered just a little too long whenever she saw him. I wanted to believe I was imagining it, that I was being paranoid, that I was searching for something that wasn't there. But deep down, I knew the truth, and I knew what I had to do. I called my mother again. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I was thinking of coming over tonight. Maybe have some wine, talk for a bit." "Oh, honey, that sounds wonderful," she said. And I swore I heard something behind her words, something careful. "What time?" "7. Perfect." She had no idea. I arrived 5 minutes early. She opened the door with her usual bright smile, pulling me into a hug. "My beautiful girl," she said, squeezing me. "Come in. Come in." I followed her inside, my heart pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. The house smelled of vanilla candles and red wine. Everything was just as it had always been, but I wasn't the same. We sat in the living room, the wine poured between us, and for a moment it almost felt normal, until I took a deep breath and said, "Mom, I need to ask you something." She tilted her head, smiling. "Of course, sweetheart. Anything." I hesitated, staring into her face, searching for even a flicker of guilt. And then I said it. "Are you sleeping with my husband?" The room went silent. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother's expression completely shatter. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. And that was all the answer I needed. I let out a shaky breath, nodding to myself. "I see." "Honey," she started. But I held up a hand. "Don't," I said, my voice shaking. "Just don't." I stood up, setting my glass down carefully. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I didn't want to hear how it wasn't what I thought or how it just happened. I just wanted to get out of there. I turned toward the door, but before I could take another step, she spoke. "It wasn't supposed to happen." I froze. She took a deep breath. "I swear to you, it was never planned. I never meant to hurt you." I turned slowly, my heart pounding. "Then how did it happen, Mom?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. She swallowed, looking down. "It was after one of your fights," she said softly. "Daniel came over. He needed someone to talk to." I listened. That's all it was at first. I felt my nails dig into my palms. And then she looked up, and there were tears in her eyes. And then, I don't know. One night we just crossed a line. A bitter laugh escaped me. "A line?" I repeated. "A line?" "Mom, you didn't just cross a line. You bulldozed through it." She flinched but didn't argue. I stared at her, my chest tightening. "How long?" She hesitated. "How long?" Her lips trembled. "Almost a year." My knees nearly buckled. A year. I had been living in a lie for an entire year. I covered my mouth, a sob threatening to escape. And then, the worst question of all slipped out before I could stop it. "Did you love him?" Her silence was deafening. My stomach turned, oh my God. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Sweetheart." But I was already moving toward the door. I couldn't do this. Not now. Maybe not ever. I stepped outside, gulping in the cold night air like it might somehow wash this all away. I felt sick. I needed to get out of there. I turned toward my car, fumbling for my keys. But something made me pause. A feeling, a weight in the air. Something was off. I glanced back at the house. The porch light flickered slightly, casting long, eerie shadows across the steps. And then I noticed it. The curtains in my mother's living room were moving, not in the way they might from a breeze or the air conditioning. This was different. They swayed like someone was standing behind them watching me. A chill ran down my spine. Was it Daniel? Had he been here the whole time listening? I gritted my teeth and marched back toward the house. If he was here, if he had been cowarded enough to let my mother take all the blame while he hid like a rat, I needed to see him. I needed to look him in the eye. I grabbed the doorknob and pushed. The door swung open. The house was silent. Too silent. The air inside was thick, heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding a secret. "Mum," I called out. No answer. I took a step forward, my pulse roaring in my ears. The wine glasses were still sitting on the table. One of them knocked slightly to the side. The air smelled of vanilla candles, but beneath that something else, something metallic. I swallowed hard. "Mom," I called again, softer this time. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something wasn't right. I took another step, my fingers tightening into fists. I was about to head toward the hallway when I heard it. A floorboard creaking. My breath hitched. It came from the direction of my mother's bedroom. I didn't know what I was expecting to find, but my feet moved on their own, drawn toward the sound like a moth to a flame. The hallway stretched in front of me, dark and endless. The only light came from the slightly open door at the end, her room. I reached it, my hand hovering near the doorframe. I didn't want to go in. I had to go in. I pushed the door open slowly. The room was dimly lit by the lamp on her nightstand, casting strange, twisting shadows across the walls. The bed was perfectly made, untouched. And then I saw it. The closet door slightly open, a crack of darkness in the corner of the room. I froze. A terrible thought slithered into my mind. What if Daniel wasn't hiding from me? What if he was hiding from something else? The silence pressed in on me, thick and suffocating. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and uneven. I took a step forward, and the closet door moved just slightly, just enough. Enough for me to see the outline of something standing inside. I sucked in a breath. I wasn't alone. My body screamed at me to run, to get out, to leave this place and never come back. But I couldn't move. Not when a hand, pale, trembling, slowly reached out from the darkness inside the closet. And then, in a voice that barely sounded human, my mother whispered, "Sweetheart, I made a mistake." I stood frozen in the doorway, my mother's trembling hand reaching out from the darkness of the closet. The air in the room had shifted. It felt wrong, heavy, with something I couldn't name. Her voice had been barely human. "Sweetheart, I made a mistake." I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering in my ears. My instinct screamed at me to run, to turn and leave and never look back. But something held me there. I took a slow, hesitant step forward. "Mom." The closet door creaked wider, and then she stepped out. My breath caught in my throat. She looked wrong. Her hair was tangled, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes wide and bloodshot, like she hadn't slept in days. There was something almost hollow about her, as if the mother I knew had been scraped away, leaving only this thing in her place. But it wasn't just her appearance that sent ice through my veins. It was the way she was looking at me. Not like a mother looking at her daughter, like something hungry, something desperate. She stepped closer, her bare feet dragging against the floor. Her lips trembled, and she whispered. I tried to stop it. I took a step back. Mum, what are you talking about? She let out a breathless, eerie laugh. I tried, sweetheart. I swear I tried. But her voice cracked. He wouldn't let me. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. Who? Her lips parted. But before she could answer, the floor creaked behind me. A slow, deliberate sound my breath caught. I turned my head, my body locking up in terror. And there he was, Daniel, standing in the doorway watching. His face was unreadable, his dark eyes locked onto mine. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Then my mother moved faster than I could react. She grabbed my wrist, her grip ice cold. He's not Daniel, she whispered harshly. He's not who you think he is. My blood turned to ice. I looked back at Daniel. He hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, just watched. Something about his posture, his expression. It was all wrong. A deep, gnawing horror settled in my gut. This wasn't normal. This wasn't human. I ripped my arm free from my mother's grasp. What are you talking about? I demanded. What's going on? Daniel smiled. A slow, chilling smile that didn't reach his eyes. I told you she'd figure it out eventually, he murmured. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. What? My mother let out a ragged breath. Her entire body was shaking now. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she whispered. Her voice broke. I made a mistake. She turned to me, eyes brimming with something like terror. And then she said something that made my entire world collapse. Sweetheart, your husband died a year ago. Silence. The room spun. I stared at her, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. No, I whispered. She nodded, tears spilling down her face. He died, baby, in that car accident. The one last year. You know that you went to his funeral. I shook my head violently. No, that's not possible. But even as I said it, something deep inside me knew. Memories slammed into me like a tidal wave. The accident, the funeral, the months of grieving, the emptiness, and then Daniel coming back, appearing in my life again, just when I needed him most. Always there, always watching, always smiling. I turned to him, my vision swimming, and for the first time, I truly saw him. His skin was too perfect, his eyes too dark, too endless, like they weren't real, like they never had been. Daniel took a slow step toward me, tilting his head. You were doing so well, he murmured, almost amused. Why did you have to ask questions? My breath came in short, panicked gasps. This wasn't real, this wasn't happening. I backed away, but my mother gripped my arm hard. We have to go, she breathed. Now, but before we could move. Daniel smiled wider. And then, in a voice that sent a cold, suffocating horror through my bones, he whispered, She's lying to you. I never died. The lights flickered. The air in the room shifted, and then the door slammed shut.